My cousin crashed my car and sued me for his medical bills because I should have maintained the brakes better. That sentence, cold, absurd, and printed in bold across the top of the lawsuit, was the moment my entire reality shifted. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, sunlight hitting the stack of papers like a spotlight exposing the villain of a crime drama. Except according to him, I was the villain. I'm 29, female, careful to a fault, the kind of woman who keeps every service receipt in labeled envelopes, who schedules brake inspections the way some people schedule spa days. My car was my pride, a 2019 Honda Accord I worked overtime to buy and maintained religiously. And somehow, according to my cousin, the charming golden child boy my family adored, I was responsible for him speeding, texting, and wrapping my car around a guardrail. I stared at the lawsuit again. Negligent maintenance, failure to warn of defective brakes, liability for medical damages. My hands tightened around the papers, not trembling, anchoring. Because behind all the legal jargon was one simple truth. My cousin wasn't just lying. He had chosen to sacrifice me to save himself. My phone buzzed. Mom. Sweetheart, she said the second I answered. Your aunt is in tears. She says you're dragging your cousin into court over an accident. An accident. That word scraped like metal. He sued me first, I said quietly, and he's lying. My mother hesitated. He said the brakes failed. They didn't. My voice came out sharper this time. I had the car serviced 3 weeks earlier. Everything was perfect. And I drew in a slow breath. I have a Dashcam. It recorded the entire crash. Silence. A long one. In that silence, something inside me clicked into place. Not rage, not fear. Something colder, clearer. The realization that this wasn't just about a car, or money, or even the accident. This was the moment I learned exactly what my cousin thought of me. That I was easy to blame, easy to pressure, easy to sacrifice. He was wrong. Before any of this turned into lawsuits, depositions, or late-night phone calls filled with guilt and manipulation, my cousin and I actually had a childhood people would describe as close. Our moms are sisters, the kind who used to whisper in the kitchen late at night while we kids sprawled on the living room floor, pretending to sleep while listening to them laugh. Holidays meant shared bedrooms, pillow fights, chasing each other across our grandmother's backyard until we were breathless. He was always the center of attention, the golden boy, the one who could charm anyone with a grin and a joke. And me? I was the quiet one, the girl who followed rules, studied early, scrubbed dishes after big family dinners without being asked. He was trouble wrapped in freckles and dimples. I was reliability wrapped in silence. Our dynamic never changed, even as adults. When he needed help moving, I showed up. When he needed rides to job interviews, I drove him. When he needed someone to vouch for him, guess who got the call? And every time I told myself, this is what family does. 3 months ago, just 3, his car broke down. Something with the transmission. He stood in my driveway, hands in his pockets, giving me that same practiced look he'd been using since we were 12, and he wanted my share of the Halloween candy. Just for the weekend, he said. I'm visiting my girlfriend. 2 hours away. I'll bring it back full tank, promise. I remember leaning against my Honda, arms crossed, trying to decide whether I should trust him with something that meant so much to me. You know I take care of this car like it's my child, I told him. He laughed, easy and careless. Relax, I'm a great driver. I didn't know he already had tickets, plural. I didn't know he had a history of speeding. I didn't know that giving him my keys would open the door to 18 months of chaos. But I did know one thing, my family would pressure me. And right on cue, my phone rang. My aunt. Honey, he really needs help. His girlfriend barely sees him these days with all the work. He just wants to visit her. You're not using your car this weekend anyway. Then my mom chimed in later, offering the classic line, just help him out. He'd do the same for you. Would he? Even then, something inside me whispered no. But I ignored it, because I was the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who always said yes. So I handed him my keys and said only one thing. Drive carefully. He smirked. Always. A lie I didn't uncover until it was too late. That weekend, while I was folding laundry and drinking tea, believing my biggest problem was whether I'd have enough groceries for the next work week, my cousin was on the highway, texting, laughing, and speeding toward disaster, with my car and my trust in his hands. And he had no idea that a tiny camera mounted behind the mirror was recording every reckless second. The first sign that something was wrong came on a quiet Saturday evening. One of those nights when the world feels soft, unthreatening. I had just finished meal prepping for the week when an unfamiliar number flashed across my phone screen. Normally, I'd let unknown calls go to voicemail, but something in my gut tightened. I answered. "Hey, it's me," my cousin said, voice strained and thin. "I'm at the hospital." The spatula clattered out of my hand. "What? What happened? Are you okay?" He exhaled sharply. "I crashed your car." For a full second, I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank except for one question. Is he alive? "Broken wrists, concussion, bruising," he continued. "Could have been worse." I pressed a hand to my chest, grounding myself. How did it happen? And then came the line that would ignite everything. "The brakes failed." My stomach dropped. Not because I believed him, but because I instantly understood the direction this was headed. I know my car. I know my maintenance schedule. I had receipts, literal receipts, proving those brakes were serviced and inspected less than a month earlier. But none of that mattered in the moment. I whispered, "The brakes failed?" He sucked in a breath like he was preparing his performance. "Yeah, I was coming up on traffic and the pedal just didn't respond. You didn't tell me there were issues." That was the first crack in the foundation, the first time his story didn't align with what I knew to be true. But I didn't argue, not yet, because what he didn't know was that I had a Dashcam, a dual-facing camera, audio, cloud backup. I installed it 2 years ago after a minor accident that turned into a nightmare of conflicting stories. And now, in the middle of my kitchen, my cousin's voice still echoing through the phone, I opened the Dashcam app with shaking fingers. The video had already uploaded. There he was, my cousin, driving 87 mph in a 65 zone, smiling at his phone, tapping the screen, looking down again and again, oblivious to the road narrowing in front of him. When traffic slowed, he jolted, swerved, slammed the brakes that responded exactly as they should, but physics couldn't save him. He lost control, not because of me, not because of faulty brakes, because of his choices. I didn't tell him about the footage, not yet. Instead, I let the silence stretch as he waited for me to take the blame, to apologize, to comfort him. "Listen," he said finally, lowering his voice the way he always did when he wanted something. This is going to be a lot. Hospital bills, repairs. I mean, the car is probably totaled." My pulse hammered. "We'll figure it out," I said carefully. "Just rest for now." But in my chest, something pressed tight, an instinct I'd ignored my entire life where he was concerned. A sense that this wasn't going to be a simple accident or a simple disagreement. This was going to turn into something bigger, messier, meaner. Because for the first time, I saw the warning signs clearly. He wasn't just panicked, he was strategizing. He was setting up a story. And he didn't know I held the truth in crystal clear, time-stamped HD. The real explosion didn't come from the accident. It came from what happened after. The ripple effects of a single lie, told with the confidence of someone who had always escaped consequences. 3 days after the crash, my phone rang while I was sorting laundry on the living room floor. The caller ID showed my insurance company. "Ms. Carter," the agent began, "we're calling regarding the claim filed by your cousin. He has stated the brakes failed." I sat back on my heels, staring at the pile of towels beside me. "The brakes did not fail," I said slowly. "I have service records." "Yes," the agent replied. "We'll need to investigate. He is also alleging that you were aware of issues, but failed to disclose them." My throat tightened. "That's absolutely untrue." "We'll verify everything," the agent said, calm and detached, the way only strangers can be while your world tilts. 2 mornings later, at 9:17 a.m., someone knocked on my front door. A man in a tan jacket handed me a thick packet of documents and said, "You've been served." For a moment, the world warped, like someone had pressed pause on reality. I closed the door, walked to the kitchen table, and set the packet down with trembling fingers. I read the lawsuit line by line. My cousin was suing me for $45,000, claiming medical bills, lost wages, emotional distress, pain and suffering, all supposedly caused by my negligent maintenance of my own car. I read it once, twice, a third time. Each pass made my chest tighter, my skin hotter. "He's not just lying," I whispered into the quiet room. "He is rewriting the entire story." That evening, my phone rang again, my aunt this time. "Honey," she said softly, "I know this looks terrible, but he's in real pain. His bills are piling up." "So he decided to sue me?" I asked. He's not lying, she insisted. The brakes failed. They didn't, I said. How would you know? You weren't in the car. I have a dash cam. The silence on the other end was immediate, heavy. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. A dash cam? Front and interiors, I said. Audio, too. It captured everything. He was speeding. He was texting. More silence. Then she hung up without another word. 20 minutes later, my cousin called. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. Yo, we need to talk. I heard you got some video or something. Maybe we can work something out. Call me back. Something we could work out? As if this were a minor disagreement, not a lawsuit trying to pin blame on me for an accident he caused. Instead of calling him, I called a lawyer, a longtime family friend who had spent decades handling auto and injury cases. We met the next morning. I set down the folder of service records and opened the dash cam footage on his computer. He watched it silently, leaning closer as my cousin appeared on screen, laughing at something on his phone while pushing the car to nearly 90 miles per hour. When the screen finally froze on the moment of impact, he exhaled sharply. Your cousin is trying to commit insurance fraud, he said, and he's dragging you into it. It wasn't anger that rose in me then. It was clarity, sharp, cold, metallic. I wasn't just fighting a claim. I was fighting someone who believed I was the easiest person to blame. My lawyer drafted the response to the lawsuit, denying every allegation and formally stating that video evidence existed disproving his claims. He sent it to my cousin's attorney. 2 days later, my cousin fired his lawyer. I learned later from mutual relatives that the man had told him point blank, drop the case or you risk fraud charges. My cousin didn't want to listen. He simply found a different lawyer, one who didn't ask questions as long as the retainer cleared. Meanwhile, my insurance company began their investigation in earnest. They requested my service records, repair history, and, most importantly, the dashcam footage. I sent everything. When the investigator called me back, her voice was more serious. We'll be conducting a full reconstruction analysis, she said. Your cousin is continuing to insist mechanical failure was the cause. Of course he was. He was clinging to the lie like it was a life raft. But this time, I wasn't going to let him drag me under with him. The inciting incident wasn't the crash. It was the moment I realized my cousin believed he could lie, manipulate, and weaponize family loyalty, and that I would fold the second things got difficult. He had no idea who he was dealing with. The days that followed felt like wading through wet cement. Every conversation, every message, every unexpected knock on my door weighed more than the last. The moment my cousin realized I wasn't immediately folding under pressure, he escalated in the only way he knew how, by dragging more family members into the chaos. The first confrontation came from my mother, who showed up at my apartment without warning. She stood in the doorway looking older than usual, shoulders tight, worry lines carved deep above her eyebrows. We need to talk, she said. I let her in and watched as she paced my living room, her hands twisting together. Your aunt is hysterical, she said finally. She says you're about to ruin your cousin's life. Mom, I said quietly, he sued me. He crashed my car while texting and speeding, and now he's lying about brake failure that never happened. She stopped pacing and turned toward me. Maybe you could settle. Pay something just to make this all go away. I stared at her, stunned. You want me to pay for his mistake? It's not about the money, she insisted. Family is more important than... Is it? The words came out sharper than I meant, but I didn't pull them back. Because he clearly doesn't think so. He's the one who started all of this. He's the one lying. He's the one trying to make me responsible for his choices. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. She didn't have an answer. Instead, she sat down heavily on the couch, rubbing her temples. I just want the fighting to stop, she whispered. So do I said, softer now. But he won't stop unless I let him win. My lawyer, meanwhile, moved quickly. He sent a formal response to my cousin's lawsuit. He included the existence of dashcam footage. He reminded their side that perjury and insurance fraud carried serious legal consequences. And after that, the silence from my cousin's camp lasted only a day before the next shock arrived. My cousin's attorney requested the footage. We provided it. 2 days later, the attorney quit. I didn't hear this from him. I heard it from 2 different relatives in the span of an hour. One of them whispered over the phone. Apparently, the video made it impossible for his lawyer to defend him. I didn't know whether to feel vindicated or sick. That night, at 10 p.m. sharp, someone pounded on my front door. Hard. Repeated. The kind of knocking that immediately spikes adrenaline. I froze, heart hammering. Who is it? You know who it is, my cousin shouted from the other side. Open the door. Against my better judgment, I opened it halfway, leaving the chain locked. He stood there, red-faced, eyes wild, not with fear, but with anger. "You need to call off your insurance company," he snapped. "I can't do that," I said. "That's not how insurance works." "This is insane," he shouted. "You're ruining my life over a car." I stared at him. "No, you're ruining your life by lying and committing fraud. All I've done is tell the truth." "The brakes failed," he yelled. "I have video of you texting at 87 miles per hour, I said, voice steady. "The video proves everything." He flinched, but only for a moment before his anger surged again. "You're dead to me," he spat. "Dead." "Then leave," I said calmly, "before I call the cops." He leaned in, kicked my doorframe hard enough that the wood splintered, then stormed off down the hall. I closed the door, locked every lock, and leaned there for a moment, letting my breath steady. Then I took pictures of the damage and sent them to my lawyer. 6 weeks passed. Tension seeped into every corner of my family. My aunt refused to speak to my mom. My mom stopped sleeping well. Holiday plans were torn apart, rewritten, renegotiated as if we were dividing nations instead of scheduling dinners. My 84-year-old grandmother, who didn't understand the details, kept asking why everyone was fighting. I never knew what to say. But legally, everything was shifting in my favor. My cousin's new lawyer filed a motion to dismiss my countersuit, arguing that since he was an authorized driver, I had no right to demand repayment. My lawyer destroyed the argument. "Authorization to drive does not mean authorization to text and speed," he said. "Negligent operation voids any implied permission." The judge agreed. And for the first time, my cousin looked like someone who realized the walls were closing in. Through all of it, my mother's pleading, my aunt's guilt trips, my cousin's tantrums, one truth became clearer every day. I wasn't the girl my family thought I was. I wasn't soft anymore. I wasn't quiet. I wasn't bending. I was done being their reliable scapegoat. And the real reckoning was still ahead. The legal process didn't slow down. If anything, it became a steady machine grinding everyone involved. What started as a messy family dispute was now unfolding in conference rooms, deposition halls, and email threads so thick with attachments I stopped checking them on my phone. The tension seeped into every corner of my life, into every family member's life, tightening like a vice. The first major turning point in this escalation came during discovery. My cousin's lawyer formally requested the Dashcam footage. My lawyer sent it within the hour. It was the one thing I never hesitated about. Not once. If truth was a weapon, that footage was a blade honed to perfection. And the moment his lawyer watched it, everything shifted. 2 days later, word spread through the family grapevine that my cousin had fired his attorney on the spot. Later, from a mutual friend, I learned the real story. The lawyer refused to participate in what he now believed was an attempted insurance fraud scheme. He told my cousin he needed to drop the case immediately, or he could face criminal referral. My cousin, in true fashion, chose denial over responsibility. He hired a new lawyer, one who didn't ask questions and apparently didn't care about red flags. Meanwhile, my insurance company completed their investigation. An agent called me one afternoon while I was at work, my phone vibrating across my desk. "Ms. Carter, we've reviewed the evidence and findings," she said. "Your brake system was inspected and certified functional 3 weeks before the accident. The dashcam footage shows your cousin texting and speeding. The accident reconstruction expert found no mechanical failure. His claim is denied." A breath I didn't know I'd been holding spilled out of me. "Thank you," I whispered. "Additionally," she continued, "we will be pursuing subrogation. The payout for your totaled vehicle was $18,500. Your cousin is financially responsible." I closed my eyes. Understood. The next escalation came in person. At 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, the same time pattern as before, there was pounding at my door again. The hallway outside echoed with the force of it, jarring me upright. I checked the peephole, my cousin. He was standing too close to the door, fists clenched, chest heaving. I cracked the door, chain still on. "What do you want?" "You need to call off your insurance company," he snapped, eyes wild. "They're trying to destroy me." "I can't call them off," I replied, "and they aren't destroying you. Your choices are." He growled, actually growled. "You're ruining my life over a car." "No," I corrected him. "You're ruining your own life by lying, texting, speeding, and then blaming anyone else you can reach." "The brakes failed." I shook my head. "The video proves otherwise." "That video doesn't prove anything," he yelled, spit hitting the floor. "It proves everything," I said calmly. "Even your first lawyer thought so." His face turned a violent shade of red. "You're dead to me." "That's fine," I said. Now leave before I call the police." He kicked the door frame again, this time leaving a visible dent, then stormed off without looking back. I documented everything: photos, timestamps, voice memos. My lawyer thanked me for being thorough. 6 weeks later, the escalation reached a new level of chaos: depositions. The deposition room was cold, the kind of cold that felt intentional, like they wanted people uncomfortable enough to crack. When my cousin walked in, he avoided my eyes, but the tension radiating from him was unmistakable, fear mixed with stubborn pride. His lawyer began trying to weave the narrative they'd been clinging to. "So, you felt the brakes were unresponsive?" "Yes," my cousin said. "At any point before the accident, did you communicate concerns to the owner of the vehicle?" "No." "Did you pull over when you noticed something was wrong?" "No." The lawyer hesitated, then said, "Your Honor," my lawyer cut in, pressing a button on the laptop. The dashcam footage flickered to life. The room filled with the sound of my cousin's laughter, the slap of his fingers on his phone, the blaring music, the open road stretching recklessly ahead. Then came the moment. Traffic slowing, his head still down, the too late jolt, the skid. The brakes screeched on the recording, loud and painfully clear. My cousin swallowed hard. "Sir," my lawyer said, leaning forward, "the dashcam shows you traveling at 87 miles per hour. Is that correct?" "I don't know. The speedometer might have been wrong." "It's possible." "The dashcam uses GPS tracking. The speed was accurate." Silence. "Sir, the interior camera shows you looking down at your phone 12 times in the 3 minutes before the accident. What were you doing?" "I was checking GPS," he muttered. "We subpoenaed your phone records. You were texting." He shifted in his seat. "I want to take a break." They took a 20-minute recess. When they returned, he tried a new angle. "Maybe the brakes failed intermittently," he said. "Maybe they worked once, then didn't, then worked again." My lawyer blinked slowly. "Your theory is that the brakes failed in a way that left no physical evidence, contradicted the expert analysis, and only occurred while you were texting at nearly 90 miles an hour." His lawyer objected, but the damage was done. My deposition afterward was uneventful in comparison. I answered every question clearly, with documentation backing every statement. I had nothing to hide. After the depositions, my cousin's lawyer approached mine with a settlement proposal. "If your client agrees to drop the countersuit," he said, "my client will drop his." My lawyer didn't even pretend to consider it. "Absolutely not. We're proceeding to trial." The final escalation came from a direction I didn't expect. My grandmother called me. She never calls anyone. "Sweetheart," she said in her trembling voice, "your aunt says you might send your cousin to prison." I closed my eyes. "Grandma, that's not true. I'm just defending myself." "Can't you forgive him?" she whispered. "He's young." "He's 27, I said gently, "and he lied, and he tried to ruin my life." Her sigh was so soft, so heartbreakingly old, that for a moment I almost wavered. But then I remembered everything: the lawsuit, the doorframe dent, the betrayal, the way he tried to twist reality. And I reaffirmed the truth that had taken me months to embrace. He wasn't my responsibility anymore. The real battle, the trial, was still to come. And I wasn't afraid. The darkest moment wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't the depositions. Not even the night my cousin kicked my door so hard the wood splintered. The darkest moment was the slow, suffocating realization that my entire family, people who had watched me grow up, who claimed to love me, were willing to look at a blatant lie and pretend it was the truth simply because it was easier than holding him accountable. It began with subtle shifts, fewer calls from relatives, holidays being rearranged, conversations that stopped the second I walked into a room. My mother tried to hide it, but slipped once when she muttered, "I can't keep being stuck in the middle of this," before sighing and apologizing. Then there was Thanksgiving. The table that had always seated 12 suddenly seated 11. My aunt announced she didn't want tension, so she'd invited my cousin but not me. My mother went without me. She insisted it was just a meal and begged me not to make it bigger than it was. I didn't argue. I just nodded, and when she left, I sat alone in my apartment with takeout and Netflix playing a show I barely registered. I kept thinking about my childhood, the sleepovers, the backyard games, the way my cousin used to tease me in the harmless kid way. I kept thinking, when did I become the expendable one? A week later, the next blow landed. My grandmother called again. Her voice, fragile yet insistent, trembled through the phone. "Sweetheart, I heard from your aunt. She says you're going to push for criminal charges. She says you're trying to ruin his future." I closed my eyes. "Grandma, that's not true." He told her the insurance company might go after him, that the state might get involved. "They might," I said gently. "He filed a false claim." He's young, dear. Grandma, he's 27. And he lied, repeatedly. There was a small silence, then a soft sigh. I just want peace in the family. When the call ended, I sat on my couch with the phone still in my hand, the apartment dim except for the lamp beside me. Peace in the family. The phrase echoed in my mind until it hollowed. Peace had always meant one thing, me absorbing the damage so others didn't have to face it. And I realized painfully that my grandmother wasn't asking for fairness. She was asking me to bend. Again. Later that week, after the deposition chaos, my cousin's second lawyer requested settlement discussions. Not because he had a case, but because he wanted an escape hatch. My lawyer told me flatly, he's hoping you'll drop everything to keep the peace. He's hoping you'll fold. That word, fold, hit me harder than expected. It wasn't just legal advice. It was a truth I had been choking on for months. Folding was what I had always done. Folding was why he felt safe trying to blame me. Folding was why my aunt could look at me and still insist the brakes failed. But something inside me was breaking. Not a snap, not a clean break, but a slow fracture spreading through years of silence and compliance. Then a final emotional punch landed. My mother came to my apartment one evening, eyes tired, voice small. "Your aunt says she can't forgive you," she whispered. "She says you've turned the whole family against her son." "He did that himself," I said, "with his choices." "I know," she breathed, rubbing her forehead as if the truth itself was painful. "But she won't see it that way." I swallowed. "Are you asking me to drop the case?" "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. "I'm just asking you to consider what this is doing to everyone." There it was, the pressure. Not said directly, but heavy enough to fill the room. I turned away from her because if I looked her in the eye, I might break in a way I couldn't recover from. "I didn't ask for any of this," I said quietly. "He dragged me into it." "I know," she said again, tears forming. "But your aunt is suffering." I let out a hollow laugh. "And what about me, Mom? Am I not suffering? Do I not count?" She didn't answer. She left shortly after, closing the door softly behind her. When the silence settled, something in me cracked open. The realization that despite the truth being so clear it was practically glowing, some people would still choose the comfortable lie. Not because they believed it, but because believing me required confronting who he really was. That night, for the first time in months, I cried. Not from fear, not from anger, but from grief. The grief of understanding that I wasn't just losing a cousin. I was losing an entire version of my family. And yet, beneath the grief, a new steadiness formed. Quiet, stubborn, unyielding. If I had to walk this path alone, so be it. Because the truth was worth it, and I was worth it. The turning point didn't arrive with fireworks or shouting. It arrived quietly, almost clinically, within the sterile walls of a courtroom. 2 days. That was all it took for the entire 18-month ordeal to collapse under its own weight. Day 1 set the stage, but day two was when everything shifted. My cousin walked into the courtroom with the same swagger he'd always worn, though thinner now, stretched over nerves he couldn't hide. He avoided my eyes, which didn't matter. I wasn't looking for his. I was watching the judge, a stern man with the kind of expression that suggested he had zero patience for nonsense. My cousin took the stand. He sat stiffly, his voice wavering only slightly as he repeated the story he'd clung to for over a year. "The brakes felt weird," he said. Unresponsive. His hands moved as he talked, painting himself as a helpless victim swallowed by mechanical failure. When it was my lawyer's turn to cross-examine, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He simply clicked a laptop and said, "Let's play the footage." The dashcam video lit up the entire courtroom. The sound of the road, the blaring music, the unmistakable glow of my cousin's phone screen illuminating his face again and again. 87 miles per hour, documented by GPS. Traffic slowing ahead while he continued to stare downward. The impact echoed, tinny but still violent. My cousin froze. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The judge's expression didn't change, but something in his posture sharpened, attention locked, verdict already forming. My lawyer stepped forward calmly. "Mr. Lewis," he said, "at any point during this footage did the brakes fail?" My cousin swallowed. "They felt weird." "That's not what I asked. Did they fail?" "I don't know." "Track the audio," my lawyer said, rewinding the footage slightly. "Listen to the brakes engage." The screech filled the room. "That is a functional braking system," my lawyer continued. "This accident occurred because you were texting and speeding. Isn't that correct?" My cousin clenched his jaw. I was checking GPS. We subpoenaed your phone records. You sent multiple text messages at 3:45 and 3:46 p.m. The accident occurred at 3:48. His silence was louder than any confession. My lawyer eased in, steady and unrelenting. You testified the brakes were defective, yet the accident reconstruction expert found no mechanical issues. Brake pads at 60% life, fluid clean, rotors normal, no signs of failure. How do you explain that? I can't, he muttered, voice shrinking. And yet when you believed there was a brake issue, you continued driving almost 90 miles per hour? I didn't realize I was going that fast. The dash cam shows you passing multiple cars. Did that not indicate your speed? He shook his head helplessly. I wasn't paying attention. The judge raised an eyebrow. Clearly. And that was the moment. Not the video, not the evidence, not even the cross-examination. It was the judge's voice. Dry, unimpressed, final. A simple word, yet it carried the weight of a verdict already forming in his mind. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Legal arguments, closing statements. My lawyer stood tall, his voice firm and composed. This isn't a case of mechanical failure, he said. This is a case of negligence, deception, and an attempt to shift blame onto someone who trusted him. The evidence is overwhelming. My cousin's lawyer tried to argue intermittent brake failure. It was weak. It was desperate. And the judge's expression made it clear he wasn't buying it. He adjourned for deliberation. My heartbeat thudded in my ears as I walked out into the hallway. My mother approached me, her eyes red. She opened her mouth to speak, but I shook my head gently. Mom, not now. She closed her mouth and stepped back. For once, no one asked me to fold. The next morning, we reconvened. The judge read the ruling without hesitation, his voice firm, almost bored by how obvious the truth was. My cousin's lawsuit, dismissed with prejudice. My countersuit, granted in full. He owed $18,500 for the car and $7,200 in legal fees. When the judge concluded by stating my cousin's testimony was not credible and repeatedly contradicted by objective evidence, a heavy knot loosened in my chest. Not victory, not triumph, something quieter, steadier, validation. My cousin stared ahead, jaw tight, refusing to look at anyone. The golden boy who had charmed his way out of everything finally faced something he couldn't escape. Facts. As court adjourned, I walked out into the sunlight, exhaling for what felt like the first time in months. Mom touched my arm gently. I'm proud of you, she whispered. I nodded. Not because I needed her approval. This wasn't about that anymore. It was because, for the first time, I had stood my ground despite the pressure, despite the guilt, despite the weight of an entire family pushing back. I didn't fold. This was the moment everything turned. The judgment should have felt like an ending, but it didn't. It felt like a door closing quietly behind me, while chaos continued exploding somewhere far away. No longer my responsibility, but still echoing through the people connected to me. The court ruling didn't just dismantle my cousin's case. It dismantled the version of him my family had worked so hard to protect. And almost immediately, the fallout began. My cousin didn't say a word to me as we exited the courthouse. He stormed past the steps, refusing to look back, his face locked in a mixture of anger and humiliation. His mother, my aunt, hurried after him, shooting me a glare filled with accusations she didn't dare voice in front of the judge. She still thinks I destroyed him, I murmured to myself. My mother heard me but didn't answer. Her silence wasn't agreement, it was exhaustion. 2 weeks later, the insurance fallout hit. My cousin was notified that he now owed my insurance company $18,500 for the car they had paid out. His new monthly premium skyrocketed overnight. The same boy who once bragged about his clean record was now flagged in the state insurance database for attempted fraud. His name would show up every time any insurer in the state ran his file. I heard from another relative that he tried applying for a new policy and was quoted $340 a month for the absolute bare minimum coverage. He couldn't afford it. His car sat uninsured for 3 months before he finally sold it and started taking the bus to work. The Golden Boy era was over. Meanwhile, my aunt dug deeper into denial. She stopped speaking to my mother entirely. She refused to attend family gatherings if I was present, claiming she couldn't handle the betrayal. Betrayal. As if I had caused the accident. As if I had fabricated the footage. As if I had forced her son to lie under oath. Christmas came next. In our family, Christmas used to mean one house, one table, one chaotic swirl of children, aunts, cousins, and casseroles. That year, it splintered. My mother chose to spend Christmas Eve with me, sitting on my couch, sipping hot chocolate, while the fireplace video crackled softly on my TV. "I'm sorry," she whispered at one point. "I should have supported you sooner." I didn't say the obvious, I know. Instead, I took her hand. "We're okay," I said. And for the first time, it felt true. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a text from my cousin. "I know you won, congrats. Hope you're proud of destroying my life over a car." I stared at the screen for a long moment. The old version of me, the girl who absorbed guilt like a sponge, might have written something soft, something conciliatory. "Not anymore," I typed slowly, deliberately. "I didn't destroy your life. You crashed my car while texting and speeding, lied about it, and tried to make me pay for everything. Every consequence you're facing is because of your choices. I simply refuse to be your victim." He never replied. In the following months, a strange calmness settled over my life. Not peace exactly. There were still awkward family dinners, strained conversations, lingering tensions, but the fear, the pressure, the feeling of being pushed into a corner was gone. My cousin began making minimum payments toward the judgment, $200 a month. At that rate, he'd be paying me for more than a decade. His credit was damaged. He couldn't finance anything. The world had finally delivered a lesson he'd managed to avoid his entire life. Charm doesn't erase consequences. I finally bought a new car, a 2022 Civic, certified pre-owned. The first thing I did was install a Dashcam, same model as before, dual-facing, cloud backup. When the technician handed me the receipt, he joked, "Oh, been burned before?" I smiled faintly. "Something like that." Driving the new car home, I realized the weight on my chest had lifted. I could breathe in a way I hadn't since the night of the accident. The road felt open again, wide and honest, unburdened by the lies that had tried to choke me. Fallout wasn't just what happened to him, it was what fell away from me. The old patterns, the quiet obedience, the belief that family loyalty meant sacrificing myself. That version of me didn't survive the trial. And honestly, I didn't miss her. When everything settled, the court rulings, the insurance fallout, the family fractures, I found myself standing in a life that felt both familiar and entirely new. Nothing dramatic changed on the outside. I still went to work. I still meal prepped on Sundays. I still visited my mother on weekends. But the way I existed in my own skin had shifted. One evening, a few weeks after the trial, I sat in my new car in the grocery store parking lot. The dashboard glowed softly. The engine hummed with quiet reliability, and the dash cam blinked its tiny blue light, a reminder of everything I endured and everything I refused to let break me. For the first time, I admitted something I had never dared to admit before. If my cousin hadn't crashed my car, I might never have seen who he truly was, and I might never have learned who I truly was either. I would have kept thinking of him as the slightly irresponsible but ultimately harmless cousin from childhood memories. I would have kept forgiving him before he even apologized. I would have stayed trapped in the role of the reliable one, the one who never said no, the one who swallowed mistreatment to keep the peace. But the accident, the lies, the lawsuit, they cracked that role open. They showed me that some people's first instinct under pressure is to lie, to blame others, to manipulate everyone around them into cleaning up their mess. That's who he was, and I finally saw it. Would I lend my car to a family member again? Maybe. To him? Never. The $25,700 he owes me is nice on paper, but I've accepted that I'll probably never see all of it. And strangely, I don't mind, because the real victory wasn't the judgment. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the vindication. It was choosing myself. It was refusing to be rewritten in someone else's story. It was learning that boundaries aren't betrayal. It was discovering that peace doesn't come from keeping quiet. It comes from standing up, even when your voice shakes. Some people asked me later if I regretted letting him borrow my car. Honestly, no, because that decision didn't ruin my life. It revealed it. It showed me exactly who deserved a place in it and who didn't.